and welcome to Prepare Like a Pro Live Chats. My name is Jack McLean. I created Prepare Like a Pro early in the year, and I'm a strength and conditioning coach working with male and female footballers all over the country, structuring their strength and conditioning training programs, off-season programs, and as well as season training. So if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, feel free to head over to my website, preparelikeapro.com, and also download free training programs and trial out my programs from there. I'd like to welcome Damian Carroll, who will be joining us this evening. For those that don't know DC, he's an experienced coach and a dual premiership VFL player for the Casey, formerly Springvale VFL team. He has plenty of coaching experience over his 15-year career in coaching. He started at Bomb Beach, which is a local footy team in Melbourne. He's coached the Gippsland Power, and he's a VFL premiership coach for the Box Hill Hawks, premiership assistant coach for Hawthorn Football Club. So really excited to catch up with DC and discuss his progression in coaching, as well as what he was doing before coaching with his teaching background, as well as he was a head of sport. So I'll just bring DC. More recently, DC has been head of development for Hawthorn Football Club and has just, BJ's joined us and has just been appointed head of development at the Collingwood Football Club. Welcome, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, mate, I got it working. I realised I probably needed a shave, mate. It's coming up a little bit too thick, the growth here, but how are you going?
Oh, you got the pies look, the salt and pepper.
Got the pies look, yeah, absolutely.
No. Well, good, mate. Take us back to the beginning. How old were you when you decided to take on coaching? And was Bomb Beach your first coaching role?
Yeah, it was. It was my first official coaching role. But look, to be honest, mate, I think probably around as a youngster growing up, I started to sort of realise I wanted to have a career in sport. And so firstly for me, it was about trying to make it in the grade, whether that was cricket or footy. And then I really got excited about, I suppose, sport and phys ed when I was sort of in year 11 and 12 and wanted to be a PE teacher. And yeah, that was really my first look into coaching, to be honest. I didn't do any sort of official coaching of juniors or anything like that before then. But look, my last year at Springvale, I became an assistant coach, and it was an interesting year. We didn't have a coach appointed till January. It was very unusual. We had a late scratching. Ken Sheldon coached, and our alignment with St Kilda fell over, and the guy had to take the pre-season. And yeah, I was probably sort of looking at more the conditioning side, the side that
awesome. Yeah.
Which was a lot of pre-season. But yeah, look, late towards the end of that pre-season, they said, look, would you like to be a playing assistant? And then I think I had one more year actually after that at Springvale, and then went into the local coaching. But local coaching is very difficult when you're playing, and my 4 years there, I was a playing coach. I would have probably had a go at coaching at Bomb Beach without being a playing coach, but that wasn't to be. I was lucky to get an opportunity at Gippsland Power, and then headed off on the off-field coaching journey, mate. So yeah, it's been a
fantastic. Yeah, so you had an interest in working as coach before that opportunity with Springvale, where you sort of had to pick up the slack and help out the club. There was already an interest there.
Yeah, there was. And look, so I was at a couple of different schools along the journey. When I was finished my course, I went to a school called Mount Scope as a sport teacher in teams. That was your job. And RSI in Warragul, I think second year I was there, I was sports coordinator, because you get thrown into those jobs when there's only 2 or 3 PE teachers. So you end up coaching so many teams. And to be honest, at Mazenod, when I was director of sport, I sort of stayed away from the footy coaching. We had enough people who wanted to do that. So yeah, I was getting more involved with the cross-country coaching, also, basketball, and, even things such as table. And obviously phys ed lessons for you to prepare and be ready for, the skills component. So I think all that was a good background to getting into coaching, and obviously sort of helped with different skills that you need as part of your coaching journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. And was there someone that was a big influence of you early days during your coaching development, or was there sort of just an array of different people that you got exposed to through your career?
Yeah, I think for me, upon reflection, there probably was. I mean, even it's interesting. My dad was one of my first coaches, and he coached us a lot, and he played some VFL, which is obviously AFL now, back in the day, just the season at Fitzroy. But he went on his own coaching journey around the countryside. But even when he was a bank manager, he'd come and coach our school footy team. And so, look, probably reflection. But, yeah, I really close I found with teachers who had similar interests. And so my great teacher, who's a tennis coach, actually, and he's still coaching now, a guy called Phil Shanahan up in Albury. He's sort of got this academy that he still works as a teacher, but he was a great coach and sort of inspired me to participate in sport. And then if I looked along the journey, I had so many good football coaches at Springvale, and they all, I think I was able to grab a little bit from all of them, even though you've got to be your own person. I think as a coach, it's really important to be yourself and coach your own way and establish. But to be honest, I just look back now and I feel like I was exposed to a lot of different personalities and the way they went about it. And I think in the 4 premierships at Springvale, we had 3 different coaches. So it's sort of, exposed actually to a lot of really strong leadership from player groups as well within that organisation, as much as those coaches were fantastic as well. So, yeah, a lot of different people, mate. And I still am learning, I learn off everyone. Even to this day, the different people you sort of get exposed to, and obviously a lot at Hawthorn, not just in the coaching front, but a number of people you can pick up something from everyone, really.
Absolutely. And obviously the development space is something that you've really owned and headed up development programs at the AFL level in more recent years. Was that something that you attracted, or was that somewhere where you sort of decided to go down that path during your coaching career, or is that something that found you?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think in reflection, it's probably something I always felt more suited to, and even working with the younger age groups at school situations was something that, I really enjoyed watching their growth and watching their journey. And so I suppose even when I started at Gippsland Power, the coaching numbers weren't too high in the AFL. I didn't have any expectation of getting into the AFL. It was a little bit of a journey with my wife, and I think we were expecting our first child that first year. We sort of went into it with, look, we've had a good go at teaching. We'll go and experience life in Warragul. And once I got in there and working with those young players, I really loved it. And then that opportunity came at the end of the second year. And yeah, definitely, mate, for me, the first 4 years was all about the youngsters in the club, and then enough to get an opportunity as an assistant. But yeah, I really felt, I think for me, one of the greatest things is watching that young player get their first game. I really feel it's something you enjoy. And for me, I've always loved the journey of watching those players sort of, step up and fulfill, for some of them, a childhood dream. And yeah, I think that's where I've probably been best suited as well in my coaching, and I think that's important. Yeah, sort
Absolutely.
of a lot and coaching with Inxa. So yeah, we'll see where that goes in the next stage.
Yeah, it's super exciting, mate. And there'd be a lot of younger, sort of your 15, 16 up to 19-year-old developing footballers watching this. Is there a trend, whether it be mindset, physical, that you've noticed over your experience where you get pretty excited when whether it be the first training session you watch a kid train, or first game where you see him play, oh, this guy's got a lot of potential, or it might be the first chat you have with them, or is there trends that you see, or is it just sort of everyone's a little bit individual and some people surprise you along the way? And what would you sort of say to developing players to focus on?
Yeah, I think for me, even when they get into AFL level, but particularly with kids, young kids, we can be really quite poor at talent identification. There's so much room for growth in all of us, and particularly, for coaches of under 10s, 11 players out there and up to probably even under 15s. I think that once you start talking their limitations, it really becomes quite common for them to believe those things, and that can be an issue. And what I've learned, even in my mind, I've made judgments about people that can be wrong, and I think you just really have to be conscious of what is coming out of your mouth and your language with players, and really trying to work with what they want to improve on, and really sit down with them and understand why they're doing it. And there is quite a few things I think that you can then put in place to assist them with their progress. But yeah, what I've learned is that with having that growth mindset, that is obviously something improved in not just footy, but I really think that, you can see, especially in footy when there's 18 positions and so many different players that, that those players that want to really buy into the mental aspect and improve and have that intent, can certainly get places for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there, for guys that, feel like there's a lot of areas of their game they need to develop to get to where they want to,
Yes.
How would you work with those guys? Do you focus on one particular attribute until they've got to that to a point? Do you focus on three? Like, how do you go about developing a player that comes to you and wants to improve themselves?
I think probably for Jack, I think I've even gone through this journey that often when you're at especially an AFL club, there's so much about what you can get better at. And I think that the first thing that I would be saying is, what are your strengths and how can you maximise those to be the best possible in those areas firstly? So I'd actually be looking at probably a strengths-based coaching first and saying, well, this is why you were drafted. And for any young players drafted, I'm really probably trying to present a message that, don't try and be a 6 or 7 out of 10 on everything. Have something that you can hang your hat on and be an 8 or 9 out of 10 and really strive to be the best you can in that area. I think it's really important. It's really quite hard and draining to come every day and just work on your weaknesses. I will touch on those areas, but I think I did, if you don't mind me sharing a story, but I was
definitely.
Marcus Buckingham is quite a well-known author, and he's got some books around strength coaching, and he spoke about Lionel Messi, who was looking at, he was getting frustrated as an early teen and probably going to leave the sport and head back home and play in Argentina and just not be the player he was, but, develop there. But he had a coach who turned the perception on his head of being better at your right foot, being a left footer. I'm not sure actually. I'm not that soccer foot, but he actually... I think
he's left footer, yeah. Lionel Messi's left footer, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of soccer players are probably 4-1 on their preferred, 4 kicks, or they obviously need skills on both sides of their body. But what he did, he's actually a 10-1. So he's become that good on his preferred side, and he does things that, you can't actually look at and physically think you can do. But and I think it's a good example for say, well, how can you enhance it? All these coaches telling him, you've got to get better at this, you've got to get better at this, and he's arguably the best ever player to have played the game. So players, I know players that probably would only be as good as some country players, metro players in a particular area, but they do have standouts in other areas of AFL footy. And I think that, again, I want to emphasise that point, that really make sure that you spend time and work on those. And then there's those other areas that I suppose they're the areas of your role in the team that you need to get better at, that the coaches need to see, that your other teammates need to see, that if you haven't got those areas and in time into those areas, that may affect you getting a game as good as you are. So I think that working and balancing on doing both is critical, but not trying to spread yourself too thin on work on 5 or 6 weaknesses at any time, just trying to really probably use people around you, whether that's a strength coach for some area that you want to improve on, whether it's one of your coaches at your club, and really try to get a bit of a plan and an action on how you can get better in those areas.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. And like a takeaway message, so if there's like 20 minutes at the end of training, would a player focus 15 minutes on their strength and 5 minutes topping up a weakness, or what would be a way that they could?
Yeah, I think that could vary a little bit. I mean, we often sort of operate in, obviously, the last week, what happened, and you might feel like you need a bit more practice in a certain area because you're going into a game and you want a bit more confidence on ground balls, so you spend a bit longer on that. But I think it's important as a player to probably not so much look at the time, look at getting the reps, but also your mindset when you're doing those things, I think, is critical. And can you actually incorporate them at top speed during training, that replicates what the game is? One of the things that's really hard to measure, Jack, is your improvement in your individual development plans or your improvement in a certain area. And there can be a lag effect. Obviously, sometimes you can be working hard on something and it doesn't come out in your next performance. So what I say is that probably every couple of months, just ask other people around you, are you improving? See if there's any stats that can back that up, and but then also look at what activities you're doing, and you might need to change the activities that you're working on. Again, not so much the amount of time, but, I think, the type of activity. Is it replicating what the game is? And that's where it can be really difficult to measure some of this stuff. But I think with your point, though, even doing a little bit at the end of training is often, really good for your mind and your mindset to go in, but you could flip it and try and get before training and do some of that stuff. Or, as I said, if it's goal kicking, can you sneak down and get a shot for goal before you get back in with your group and listen to the coach and those things? Even at level, you can be going to training with a real focus on what you want to get better at, and sort of give yourself a tick at the end of the training session on whether you've actually been able to practice that.
That's fantastic. So it's not necessarily adding more to your routine. It's just the quality and the mindset of what you are already doing at training.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Might have been Rats, or I know Isaac used it a bit, but less more often. It was actually a good method, just sort of little stints of it, and really varying up. So even with something like goal kicking, not having 10 or 12 shots from exactly the same spot either. You'll get better in practice at that, but varying up your position where that shot for goal is, and then you don't get on autopilot. You actually have to establish a different focus and a different position and a different regime, which is something that I think is really important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, fantastic, mate. And is there like a massive amount of change or growth that you've seen football over your career at the highest level? Have you seen a lot change, or is it more so the way things are done, like that philosophy you're talking about now, like the quality of things and the mindset of things are just done better as the game's grown, or has there been different methods to development?
Yeah, things have changed and developed, and I feel we monitor things fairly closely now. But what I really think, to me, the conversations between players is just so critical, and I think that it's really important that those are maintained. And I think they've always been the key to good coaching. Might have been going to touch on this later, but to me, the best players, they're actually still the best coaches of themselves, and they develop themselves, and they almost have a mindset of coming every day and getting better and trying to improve. And they might need a little bit of guidance or the environment around them, but they definitely come with that mindset and purpose, and they're able to switch off. So Hodgie, Mitchell, Buddy Franklin, these guys, hugely competitive at training, and hugely competitive in life. Anything that you try to knock them off with, they'll sort of come back hard, as you would have noticed in the warm-up room there with a few of those guys. But they coach themselves. I mean, I've said to Sam, and he's a good example. We'd have video review when I was midfield coach. We'd have video review at 8:00 on the Tuesday morning. And as a coach, you're actually late at the club on the Monday because you're starting to work on the opposition. But if it got to 7:45, I wasn't there, even though video review started at 8, and he was always there. And you'd often get the message, be like, 15 minutes DC is like 10 minutes late. So he'd feel the pressure of getting, and he's probably understanding a little bit how hard that was after that Monday nights. But look, or he'd come into the coach's room and he might even throw a rebounder down and say, "What are you coaches doing on the computer?" So I think Scrimmer's just joined there. So Scrimmer, make sure you keep that one in mind when you see Mitch on the computer. But look, he made you work. And for me, the best players, they coach themselves and they think of activities that will get them better. They push themselves to their limits. They're competitive training, and they have really high standards of themselves and others around them. And for me, even working with someone like Mitch, I sat down with him, and he was towards the end. I think he was probably, as midfield coach, I think I was 30. I'm sorry, I wasn't 30. I was in the 40s, but Mitch was 32. And I said, "Coach," and he said, "Just show me what I've done wrong, and I'll work it out." And I was going, I was wrapped with that. Now, some people would go, "Oh, cocky, that's a bit cocky," like you've got a coach there. But I think as coaches, if we just tell them everything, they don't actually learn. Anyway, they've got to work it out for themselves. And he reached the point in his career where his philosophy was he had to work it out and want to see certain things about his game. But and sometimes you can't. That just takes time in the system, and staying in the system for a period of time will learn those things and place a price on it. I think it's really important that they use senior players to develop them and other players within the, their local clubs and other coaches and so forth as well. Without, I know this is a long answer, but also
that's good.
You can't have too many voices as well in your footy. That can be through the year levels, and you've suddenly got your parents telling you one thing about how you're playing, and then your assistant coach, and then your head coach, and then your school coach, and then so it can become quite cluttered at times, which is not what you want when you're going out there to play.
Absolutely. And on that, like with those players that you've worked with that have had such great careers, and they sort of, it sounds like it was a real two-way relationship with you. Is there something that you've learnt from them, from those guys? Like, is there, and that you now use either in your next role at Collingwood or in your coaching, or is there things that they've taught you along the way as well as you've taught them? Yeah,
look, I think there's technical, tactical stuff that you learn from players because they're out on the ground and they, the video is quite easy to sit and you learn their thinking, you learn the situation, and that's all a part of it. But learn an enormous amount from players. I would think I've learnt more from not just senior players, but from young players than I've been able to, give to them as well. I think it probably what I've learned as well, and it's probably not coming through tonight, but is to sort of not talk as much as well and try and listen to, try not to feel like you have to impart your method onto them, actually get them to do, will help them learn. But I continue to learn from them. There's so many resources now as well, Jack, like with podcasts and things and that. And I think that's great, and I do a lot of that. But I think you've also got to be a bit careful because sometimes you need to apply that information and not just read it. So we often know a lot now, but knowing is one thing, but then being able to execute it and do it is another thing. And I think that's where you take all these things on and then try and see what works for you. I've seen how you operate in the gym, and it feels like you're a real coach, and you listen to the player and give them the time. And I think that's how our athletes want to be, coached now. You trying to coach like someone else, or me trying to coach like Alistair Clarkson or whoever it is. It's just about buying into your own method. And I think as you get older, mate, you like me, you do feel comfortable in your skin to be yourself. I think someone like Chris Fagan, sort of his coaching, he's quite comfortable now and really matter about the external noise in his position.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome, mate. At that stage, guys, if you've been watching, which I know there's a few that have joined us throughout this last sort of 20 minutes, don't just let me take all the time with DC and ask him the questions. Feel free to press through your questions by hitting the bottom question mark, and that will come straight through to us. And we're happy to answer your questions as well. So shoot them through. What are you most looking forward to in 2021, mate? I know you've got a new appointment now as head of development at Collingwood Football Club, which is super exciting, mate, and congratulations on that role.
Thank you.
What are you most excited about for 21?
Yeah, I think that'll be one of the things. I try to get a bit more balance now with some, not so much goals, but personal and professional. And for me, professionally, obviously, a new opportunity, 10 years at one club is a long time. So for me to get out and see a different club and experience different people, I had a great time at Hawthorn. Obviously, it's good to sort of see how a different club operates across the whole club. And just personally, I'm just looking forward to seeing the kids get back into some of their activities and sort of find that balance for myself, getting back to, work and family. I've been lucky this year to be home quite a bit. So, sorry, mate, the screen cut off then here. Looking forward to back on. Yeah, I'm sure the goals might change a little bit into January and Feb when I'm sort of settled in.
For sure. And is the role very similar to Hawthorn? So managing the academy, 1st to 4 year boys. Do you want to explain a little bit to the guys that don't know what head of development means?
Yeah, I think it is. I've got a meeting tomorrow that I'll find out a little bit more. I suppose 10 coaches years at AFL clubs going to 6. I suppose there will be a little bit different, and I feel like already, even in the interview, that there's probably a chance, but also a need to be across a few areas. So whether that's training coordinator, whether that's sort of some coach education stuff with them, which is part of what I've done at Hawthorn, helping their VFL coaches develop, but primarily I'd imagine it's their younger players' development. But also, I think, as we've sort of looked at Hawthorn, I think the ability to develop not just your young guys, but have a development philosophy across your whole list, I think is pretty important as well. So, yeah, I'll find out a little bit more. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to sort of getting into to see the young guys before Christmas, and then the older ones, or everyone else is back on the 6th of Jan, I think it is. So,
yeah.
But
we've spent a fair bit on developing players, and you've dropped some great gems for the young footballers watching. What about, you've had a fantastic celebrated coaching career? What would you say to you 15 years ago when you were starting out, finishing up playing at Casey, and what would be your advice?
Yeah, don't worry about don't think you can change everything. I think initially you need mentors, so you need people to sort of support you. I think you need some within the club you work at and some outside the club. So I think at Bomb Beach I sort of tried to do it myself. And I still remember one night when I think we gave up like a massive lead against Mornington. It was like, even talking about it now, I feel bad. And it's
they never go away, hey?
I think I was bed that night, and I must have been staring at the ceiling and sort of doing some sort of like, and my wife said, "What are you doing?" And I must have been going through her mind, and she said, "Look, you're not a puppeteer. You can't pull all the strings." And it's probably one of the best bits of advice I've had. I realised you just can't control everything, and even my first couple of years at Box Hill, I think I was trying to do, everything. You're trying to know the opposition so well. You're trying to be across your list of 45, 50 players, especially then when there was development squads. And the last year I coached, and we were fortunate enough to win the premiership, and this definitely wasn't the reason, but I would have done less work and was just a lot fresher in that. And I think when you're in front of the players as much as you are, you've got to be fresh, you've got to be upbeat, and you've got to sell hope and have good leadership. And I think that would be my advice, is just to make, you can always do more. As I said, you can watch more vision of the opposition, you can plan more, you can prepare more, but ultimately there's a lot you still can't control. And I think if you can keep it in its and then have your balance with your family life and be present, I think that as a coaching journey.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great advice, mate. Well, if there's any questions, guys, shoot them. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you for joining me tonight, mate. It was a really, really good chat. And for those that missed out, I'll make sure I post it in a week's time and get more people watching this recording, because it's been really invaluable listening to your story throughout your career, but also stories through your coaching journey and how that's impacted to where you're at today, going over to the Pies. So
thanks, mate.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. But
stuff, mate. Well done on all the work you're doing too. And yeah, obviously anyone out there that's working with you is lucky to have you on board, and certainly keep up to date with all your posts and that. You're one of the social media gurus at the moment.
I'm trying. I'm learning heaps. Talk about learning.
Yeah, for anyone, he's a terrific coach, because he displays empathy and he shows real care and he knows his stuff. So well done for organising all these